Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Confident Muslim section. My name is Altaf Hussain. I teach social work at Howard University, and I'm currently serving as the Vice President of the Yearning Institute for Islamic Research. I want to begin by thanking the Muslim American Society for hosting us. MashaAllah, tabarakallah, it's amazing to have this much access to not only you all, but to help you to get to know better about Yearning Institute. So thank you so much, MAS. And now, another board member from Yearning Institute.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. My name is Dalia Fahmi. I'm a professor of political science at Long Island University and a proud board member here at Yearning Institute. And I want to ask you all to do one thing. Take out your phones and please download the Yearning app. On the Yearning app, you can find all of our resources, all of our infographics, our papers, but most importantly, answers to some critical questions of our time. And it's really an honor for me to have the opportunity to introduce our president and founder of the Yearning Institute, Sheikh Omar Suleman.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa rasulullah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi man wala. I want to thank Dr. Altaf and Dr. Dalia, and also Ustad Lubna Mullah, who's here as well and is a board member, but unfortunately can't join us on the stage right now. And once again, thank MAS for this incredible opportunity. Alhamdulillah, there is no greater synchrony than you can find between two organizations than you do between Yearning and MAS. And alhamdulillah, we're working here together to try to not just celebrate the confident Muslim, but to generate the confident Muslim, inshallah. And this is a program that we've been hosting year after year here, alhamdulillah. And we have the treat of actually having two people this year to present, inshallah ta'ala. So I'm going to start off with the first. And this is a brother that I met in Canada. So I was in Quebec in Canada, and I was at this program for Islamic relief where we were fundraising for Syrian refugees. And this brother takes the stage and demonstrates such an incredible energy, and you could tell that he has his heart into his work. And so I got curious about his story. And inshallah ta'ala, I'm not going to take away from his story, I'm just going to introduce him and let him introduce himself to you. His name is Eduardo Anjos. Eduardo was born in Brazil from a Catholic family. He moved at a young age to Montreal, Canada, where he currently lives. Prior to converting to Islam in 2008, Eduardo was an Islamophobe who used to vilify and bully his Muslim peers in high school. Since becoming Muslim, Eduardo has always been quite concerned about how mainstream media negatively portrays Islam and Muslims in the public arena. Over the years, he decided to focus his efforts in trying to humanize the image of Muslims by helping the Muslim community reclaim its own narrative through advocacy work, media engagement, and humanitarian work. Eduardo worked with several prominent organizations in Canada, such as the National Council of Canadian Muslims and the Canadian Muslim Forum. Today he serves as the regional manager for Islamic Relief Canada in the province of Quebec. If you all could pay attention and help me welcome our brother Eduardo. Jazakumullah khair.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Chicago, mashallah. I'm loving the hospitality. I'm loving the conference. Big shout out to the organizers, Yearning Institute. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak and to share my story. I'm truly blessed, alhamdulillah, to be amongst you today. I'm not saying this to be polite. I see light in this conference. I see hope. I see so much potential. It's an exciting time to be a Muslim, alhamdulillah. So I just want to share a quick story before I go into my talk. While I was coming here, I almost became shaheed 2 times. First time is because I got food poisoning in Montreal and I was basically really feeling sick. I almost canceled my talk yesterday because I didn't sleep at all. And the second time, it has to do with why I'm actually wearing a Malcolm X hoodie. I think some of you may be wondering. So I was basically in Canada yesterday, getting ready for the conference, and I was basically trying my best suits to basically match the premium quality of this conference, and I was feeling confident. I was visualizing my talk. And then my wife comes in, and she gave me this look of disgust. She's like, "Where do you think you're going?" And I told her, "Well, babe, you know I'm going to go to the conference and speak and share my story." And she says, no, you're not going to dress around like this when I'm not around, okay? So you could take that off. And I'm like, "Seriously, are we doing this?" And she was like, she gave me the death look. So I understood that it was a matter of life and death, so I just decided my favorite hoodie, which is the Malcolm X hoodie. And Malcolm X is a very important figure of my life, because through his story, I was able to find the courage and the strength to embrace Islam. But before we dive there, I want to start this talk with a social experience. I want you to do as I say. Take any hand, lift it up, and put it on your forehead. Interesting. Can we have the camera to film the crowd? So for those of you who are able to actually see on the big screen, a lot of you are actually putting your head, your hand on top of your head and not your forehead. Isn't that interesting? And the reason why that is because action speaks louder than words. We are people who imitate. We don't necessarily act upon what we hear, right? And this is the central theme of my talk today. So as Omar Suleman explained, yes, I'm involved with many organizations, and I'm currently working with Islamic Relief Canada. By the way, Assalamu alaikum to my Islamic Relief brothers and sisters from USA. Good work, keep it up. But before I reach this level where I'm able to dedicate my entire life to the service of the community, I used to be an Islamophobe. Not the type of Islamophobe that would just give you dirty looks or that would just make you feel bad about your Muslim identity. I'm talking about the despicable Islamophobe that would use violence to make sure that Muslims didn't feel welcome. How does someone from such a background changes to be where I am today? And this is what I want us to focus on during this talk, because I think we got da'wah work completely wrong. Oftentimes what you see is a lot of Muslims trying to change other people's perspective about Islam through rationale. But it starts with the heart, my brothers and sisters. Okay? So let's go back to when I heard about Islam for the first time. No big surprise, it was 9/11. When I saw these two towers fall, and I basically was told that Muslims were the perpetrator, it was very simple math. Muslims are terrorists, period. These are barbaric people, and there's no exaggeration in these statements. I deeply believed it. Muslims were people that should have been incarcerated. Muslims were people that, in my perspective, should not have the freedom to walk amongst civilized people. And what ended up happening is that through my adolescence, I bullied a lot of my peers in high school. And the reason why I did that is essentially to let them know that they were not welcome. I even got arrested in my math class for beating up a Muslim in high school. One of my colleagues named Abdul once left the classroom crying because I had lit his hair on fire. I lit his hair on fire. It was really bad. But eventually what ended up happening is that I met a confident Muslim. To my knowledge, that confident Muslim was the only foreign student that ever came to my high school back in the days. His name was Usama. Usama was a very interesting personality because he was someone that had this wit, that charisma, that made it very difficult for him to be bullied. He was likable. He was intelligent. He's the type of guy you wake up in the morning and you wonder, what is Usama going to do today? Literally. He used to come sometimes to school with like one pair of red Converse and the other pair black, and he was just so funny and interesting. And one day after gym class, we're basically standing in line to go to drink water, and Usama's right in front of me, and as he's about to go take a sip of water, he holds back. And he's like, shoot, I forgot. I'm fasting. I can't do it. I'm like, you're doing what? He's like, I'm fasting. I can't drink. This is the time of the year where Muslims, control themselves and don't eat, neither drink. I'm like, all right, that's fine, but just get out of my way because I'm thirsty and I want to drink. So I went for the water, and as I'm drinking the water and enjoying the water, Usama's like, yeah, that's fine, but fasting is only for the strong people, not the weak people. Not a lot of people can do what I'm doing right now, so you wouldn't be able to do it if you were even willing to do it. And then I choked on the water. I'm like, excuse me? You think I wouldn't be able to fast if I wanted to? You think I wouldn't have the ability to do what you're doing? Let me prove you wrong. And then Usama and I basically became friends because I deliberately made sure that I spent all my time in high school with him during lunch so that he was seeing that I was actually fasting. I wanted to prove a point. And as I started to fast, brothers and sisters, you know what happened? My heart started to change. I remember one day I was alone in my room and I started to eat, and I was so hungry that I actually eat the bone of my chicken. Yeah, it's possible. If you chew enough, you'll be able to eat the chicken bone. That's how hungry I was. And then all of a sudden, I couldn't help but to start to feel really deeply emotional and grateful for this blessing of having food. And I started to tear. And I wiped my tears with my shirt. And then I realized I have a private uniform. I go to private school. I'm like, oh man, there's another thing to be grateful for. And then I'm looking at the roof, and I'm like, I have a roof. Man, when's the last time I said, thank you, God, for this? And I'm like, who pays the bills? Who pays for this roof? My mom. And then I felt so emotional. I started to cry. I ran to my mom. I hugged her. And I hadn't spoken to my mother for 3 years. The first thing my mom asked me when I went to actually hug her is, are you drunk? Are you drunk? And I told her, no, Mom, I'm sorry. I've just realized I've been a very bad son. And I will try to make it up to you. So that was one of my first experiences with Islam. So I had that type of transformation in my heart, and I decided to basically go deeper in my relationship with Usama, who ended up introducing me to his family. So one day, Usama's brother-in-law and his sister invited me to their house in Sherbrooke, and it's about an hour from Montreal. And I went there on my own, and I just accepted the invitation because Usama was a friend of mine, and I liked him, and I didn't want to make him feel as if, I wasn't really comfortable with his Muslim identity, because he had told me that his sister wore the veil and that his brother-in-law was religious. He was actually the MSA president of Sherbrooke University. So I reluctantly accepted, and as I'm going there, I swear to God, I have never seen better hospitality and better treatment of guests than in this house. I was just amazed by the Muslim hospitality. Because Muslim hospitality, when done well, it's unbeatable. Literally, they had the couscous, they had the tagine, they had the pastilla, all the best Moroccan dishes. They even had rented my favorite comedy movie just to make me feel really at home. But I was still uneasy because I knew that these people weren't what they were acting out. I thought they were acting out. I thought that they just wanted to calm me so that at night they could slit my throat. And this is not an exaggeration, by the way. I had these heart palpitations. I remember being very uneasy, especially around Usama's family, because they were giving me da'wah and they were saying all these compelling arguments as to why Islam was the truth. And deep down in my heart, I felt these were amazing stories, but I knew that they were just trying to convert me. So what did I do? I built these fences higher and higher around me so that they wouldn't be able to penetrate my heart. And then at night, that's when things got interesting. When it was time to sleep, they basically told me, Eduardo, we have a bed for you. Please, you're a guest of honor. We'll give you our bed in the master suite. And I said, no, it's okay. I'll just take the couch, and I'm not really tired. I think I'm just going to stay awake all night. I wasn't going to sleep anyways. I was too scared. And then, you know, as the time went by, at one point it became really late, and then I hear someone waking up. I started to become really stressed because, you see, in my head, they want me to basically sleep so they can kill me. And then I hear the floor crack, someone's going to the washroom, and then as the person is going to the washroom, I didn't know who it was. I didn't know if it was Usama, Simo, or his sister, but I just knew that someone had woken up to go to the washroom, and I was like, okay, thank God, it's just a pee-pee break, good, so I can relax. But then I hear Allahu Akbar, and that's when things went south. Because I knew what followed after this, right? It was an explosion that was going to happen. I'm not exaggerating. I was so afraid for my life, I just basically froze. I froze. And then what ends up happening is that after the prayer, there was some silence for a few minutes. And I'm praying, basically, like, God, please save me from this. What do I do? Do I just take my stuff and run? Do I just pretend I'm dead so they have mercy on me and they don't kill me? And then Usama's brother-in-law is basically started to walk towards me, and as he's walking towards me, he did something that changed my life. So small, yet so powerful and so impactful. While I was pretending to be dead and kind of semi-closing my eyes and looking at him approaching me, and his hand getting bigger and bigger to slit my throat, right? He takes a blanket, he covers me, he closes the light, he closes the TV, and he goes back to sleep. At that very moment, my heart had given shahada. At that very moment. Because when he did that, he wasn't expecting praise, he wasn't expecting recognition, he wasn't expecting anything other than to do what was right. He thought I could have been cold, and he wanted to cover me with a blanket. And then from that day on, I started to actually, in my heart, want to become Muslim. I had become Muslim, but I was kind of reluctant to become Muslims because there were very few confident Muslims around me. When I looked at Muslims overall, I felt most of them were kind of embarrassed about their identity. And it was also kind of a very difficult paradigm shift for me to make, right? To go from loving these individuals and loving this religion, right, to coming from a place where it was hate. And then what happened is I went to Morocco, and as I go to Morocco for a special invitation that Usama gave me, I'm just amazed with the amount of love and hospitality and kindness all around me. I don't understand anything, but I can see so much love. And then when I came back to Canada, I said, I want to become a Muslim because I've seen these people act and behave in their private houses, and their amazing character proved to me that this deen, this religion, is a transformative force, but in order for it to have the ability to impact the world, it has to penetrate the heart. And these people weren't just talking about Islam, these people were living it. So I just want to end my talk with two questions. At that very moment when Usama was about to go drink the water, he could have said, oh, I'm just going to drink the water because I don't want to have to justify why I'm not drinking the water, because he knew that I was a bigot. But that's not what he did. He was confident, and he held back, and he actually told me why he was doing it. If Simo Muhammad wasn't waking up for Fajr, and right after the prayer, he came to me to cover me with a blanket, right? If he wasn't a practicing Muslim, would I be here today? If they were not confident, if these people were not living the message? So, brothers and sisters, it's an exciting time to be a Muslim. We already have the attention towards us. There's a lot of Eduardos out there in the world right now that are just waiting for you guys to do your job and to show them Islam through actions. Because at the end of the day, action speaks louder than words 1,000,000 times. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
MashaAllah. Another round of applause for Eduardo. MashaAllah. So Eduardo is someone that if you were to walk into an Islamic relief event in Canada, you would just see him presenting, and you'd probably assume he was Palestinian or something with a really cool accent. But it's really amazing when you get to know people at a deeper level and where they come from and just everything that they went through to get to that point. And here you have an example of not just someone that became Muslim, but someone that contributes greatly to the Muslim community, and we're grateful to have him in our midst, and we ask Allah to reward him and to reward Usama for being the vehicle by which Allah guided him to this beautiful faith, and we ask Allah to give us that confidence of both of them and certainty in our faith. Allahumma ameen. The next person is actually someone that served at Yaqeen Institute as a fellow as well, that recently made history, alhamdulillah. Abrar Esam Omeish currently serves as a school board member at large in Fairfax County, overseeing a $3 billion budget for 1.2 million constituents right outside of Washington, D.C. She's the first Libyan, the first Muslim, and the youngest woman ever elected to political office in the state of Virginia, mashallah, tabarakallah. Abrar holds a double bachelor's with honors from Yale University, where she served as MSA president, and has pursued religious studies classically, both domestically and abroad. She's currently a dual MPP JD student and a fellow at Georgetown University. Please help me welcome Abrar Esam Omeish.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Okay, are we confident Muslims? We're going to try that again. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Okay, bismillah walhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. As Imam Umar mentioned, my name is Abrar Esam Omeish. And inshallah, I look forward to speaking to you a little bit about our journey and how, inshallah, I look forward to seeing many people in this audience becoming confident Muslims in the various arenas that they will excel at as well. You know, one of the most beautiful things about our identity as Muslims and our position as Muslims who live in this country and who perhaps were born here is the alignment of purpose that we find in our faith and in our identities as Americans and as fellow human beings and neighbors in this country. So while it's our duty to serve others and be good neighbors, it's also our duty and our purpose to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we serve those around us, that we uplift those who are oppressed and who are minorities, the marginalized. And it's that alignment of purpose that puts us in a unique place, allowing us to dedicate our lives to not only please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but to serve humanity by doing that. And that it's only through doing that that we fulfill that. And it's that alignment of purpose that I found myself thinking about the community around me. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, كُونُوا قَوَّامِينَ بِالْقِسْطِ شُهَدَاءَ لِلَّهِ, what does it mean when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls upon us to be witnesses for the conditions in our communities on His behalf on this earth? You know, in a country where somewhere in America there is a family that can't afford to put food on the table, but also somewhere in America there's a Muslim who knows that the Prophet ﷺ told us that he's not amongst us who goes to sleep when their neighbor is hungry or who's content when their neighbor is hungry. But at the same time, somewhere in America, there's a child who's afraid to go to school because maybe he'll be picked up by ICE. Or his mother can't be engaged in his education because she fears what could happen to her family. But somewhere in America, there's also a Muslim who understands the importance of the fundamental human rights of each and every one of us, and who knows that the Prophet ﷺ himself was an orphan. And somewhere in America, there's a community where folks are polluting our earth, where trees are being cut down. But there's also a Muslim somewhere in America that knows that the Prophet ﷺ told us not to waste water even if we're at a running stream. that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us as khulafa of this earth, people who are to take on that obligation of being custodians of our planet. And that is the inspiration and the optimism that we look forward to, and that ultimately, for me, alhamdulillah, in my community, you know, one of the wealthiest counties in the country, one of the largest, most diverse, most highly educated counties, and we saw disparities where, you know, if you're African American, if you're Hispanic, if you have a disability, you're 2 to 3 times more likely to be disciplined. How do I, as a Muslim, accept to be a witness of the condition in my community, seeing that that's the case when I don't do anything about it? Or where I live in a county where folks live in plenty of privilege, but at the same time, our neighbors, and thousands of them, are homeless or don't have enough to eat, that maybe school lunch is the only meal a child can access in a day. So then each and every one of us asks ourselves, what is it that's our obligation? And of course, it wasn't a journey without challenge. So subhanAllah, you know, in taking the example of the Prophet ﷺ and realizing that there is a path of prophets that we can all take today, in taking that example and being public servants. So I had to decide, what was my brand going to be? I look really different. I'm a new face in politics. Certainly in my area, you know, the establishment is very strong. And I had to kind of formulate what my identity was going to be. But subhanAllah, as Muslims, we have a unique contribution, a value added in the public arena. That our identity, first of all, that we grew up in communities that are incredibly diverse for the most part. That we understand intersectionality from lived experiences. And that those are models we can bring forward to the public arena, where race and class are things, are ills that lead to injustices in our communities. And that was an important part for me of what I saw my value added being. And I wanted to set a new standard for public service inspired by the very tradition that we follow. When I think of examples like Umar radiallahu anhu, who was a khalifa, a strong man, someone who folks feared when he would walk past, but who had the humility and the heart of public service to be checking on families in the middle of the night when he didn't have to. And when he found that one family, he heard children crying, and many of you know the story, because they didn't have enough to eat. The mother was cooking, just boiling stones, pebbles, so that the children could fall asleep, thinking that there's food. And how when he spoke with that woman and she criticized this Umar person who was not a proper leader, and how could he leave us in such a state, admitted his own situation and had the heart to realize that he felt he was not a proper public servant because one person in his community, one family was going to sleep hungry. And seeing examples like that and comparing it to who our politicians are today, and thinking, wow, subhanAllah, we can draw from these examples, who, as you all know, then made sure that very night they brought food from the food bank and served that family. But to think we can set a new standard of public service as confident Muslims who come forward with the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ and the examples of the many Sahaba who showed exemplary leadership in public service. And even though, as many of you know, politicians, tend to sit where, in their offices, they're treated with this dignity and they're treated like they're royalty. But seeing from my tradition, what was a public servant? That I can define a role for all of society, not just for the Muslim community. That it's not about being a politician. I'm not a politician, right? I'm a servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is indebted to you as a public servant. Trying to reshift the way we think about that. Thinking of the example of Shu'aib alayhi salam, who said, "In urid illa al-islah ma istata'at, wa ma tawfiqi illa billah." That I want to just set an example. I want to bring islah. I want to correct the ills of my society. And my success is only by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So setting that new example of public service was something that inspired our team. And alhamdulillah, led to a different example. So when people see a Muslim politician, there's all sorts of fear and doubt, no, for sure. And the establishment's very uncomfortable, especially as a young person, or someone with hijab as well. So then it became about defining what was it going to look like for me to be a Muslim, and I hate the word politician as I've said, so public servant. I had people, certainly, I mean, and a lot of it is natural. So then I also ask myself, how do I come from a place of compassion and not anger? Because it's that example of the Prophet ﷺ that I draw on. But for example, one lady would come to me, oh honey, you don't have to wear that in this country. As if it was forced or that my father, made me do it. And there's to this day someone who I serve with who behind closed doors said, I'm not going to their mosque. They force their women to wear that. And this is someone, by the way, who I'm going to be working with for the next 4 years. But seeing that these are some realities, and I'll mention another, one lady came up to me at one of the socials, and she was a supporter. In fact, she was someone who gave me a $100 check the minute I spoke with her, subhanAllah, one of my first donors. And she said, I'm just glad you're not one of those people who, have to pray on time and worry about that. And I was like, you know what? I am that Muslim. Because وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ قَوْلًا مِمَّنْ دَعَا إِلَى اللَّهِ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا وَقَالَ إِنَّنِي مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. Absolutely. Who's better in speech than one who calls to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, does righteous deeds and says, indeed, I am of the Muslims. That is who I am. I do care about praying 5 times a day, and I care about praying on time. And I'm going to make you make accommodations for me to do that. And that's the spirit I want us to take forward. That our contribution comes from principle, comes from valuing integrity, comes from caring about uplifting those who are not in the room, having a recognition that sometimes when we're in rooms and settings of power, there are lower income people, there are folks who aren't present that we want to be a voice for. And you take pride in that because that's the tradition we lean on from the Prophet ﷺ's example. So alhamdulillah, trying to find that place for myself, because as many of you may know, there's this concept of the moderate Muslim. And the moderate Muslim, maybe I was supposed to put on some makeup and let out my hair. Maybe I was supposed to wear skinny jeans or a kind of, a Western suit. And that's how I was supposed to show up. So that I can be a little more acceptable. Because no one's going to vote for someone that looks like this. And by the way, for those young Muslimas, I'm dressing the way that I would dress in a political setting as well. But that is a refusal to let that taming happen. Because we have a lot to bring through our values and through our passion for the examples that we've learned from. Okay, so moving past that, so then we start campaigning. We bring together a team. Alhamdulillah, we wanted to bring folks from the homeless shelter all the way from the high schools, having young people involved all across, right? Not just Muslims. It's about serving the entire community and finding those coalitions in ways that other campaigns weren't even doing or thinking about. So then it became about the positions I was going to take. I was the only candidate, and it was a lot of candidates running, who was willing to do something like it was called the Fairfax for All pledge, and it was to vie to protect undocumented people in our county. And where does that come from? Our identity at the end of the day, our values as Muslims, there's a courage that we can derive from our belief in Tawheed. When we believe there is one God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and there is no one else that we fear, no one else that we'll put our head down to, right? That we will do anything, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make us successful because we chose the path that upholds His values most, despite the haters, and there are many. That إِنَّ الَّذِينَ قَالُوا رَبُّنَا اللَّهُ ثُمَّ اسْتَقَامُوا لَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. That when we take the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and that we courageously stand up for those values, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's nothing to fear. And ultimately Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala leads us towards outcomes where we can win. So a few things happened on the campaign. We had people who, yard signs is one of the things that you do. You put them out, and people were excited to put them in front of their house, and it says, vote for Abrar. And we found some of those ripped up in the forest. We found people who would be very disrespectful towards my volunteers and who would say racist things. I happened to run under one of the parties, as you kind of have to. And I had my campaign manager, she was not Muslim, she was a young white lady. And people would go up to her and intimidate her and tell her, you know what, I'm going to vote for all the Democrats except Abrar. Just this kind of psychological undermining to kind of say that someone that looks like that will never be accepted. And it was a question of what we're going to do in response to those kinds of things. I ended up, having an incident where someone tried to present a bribe to me. And this was after an incident, subhanAllah, I ended up having a crazy incident where it was a police encounter and the police ended up beating me up. And people used that story against me in a way that they knew exactly what had gone down. They knew it was an injustice, they were ashamed of it, and they tried to give me money to cover up the story so that I don't speak about it. And they sent people and they sent messages to intimidate us. But subhanAllah, I would draw back on the example of the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba. People like Sumayya, alayha salam, who was the first martyr in our deen, who no matter what refused to succumb. Or people like Bilal, who stood with a stone in the blazing heat and still, ahadun ahad. That because we believe in the mission and the values that we stand for, and we know that they're a contribution to our society, that despite all of that, we're going to move forward. And we're going to set that example, and we're going to show the beautiful nature of what our deen can bring forward for all of humanity. So when we think about where we derive our strength from, that tawheed, that we fear no one but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it comes from all the way in the beginning of our monotheistic story with Ibrahim alayhi salam, who as a child saw idols and decided to refuse to worship, to refuse to put his head down for other than the one. And from that day, when that monotheistic message, that Abrahamic tradition that holds all people of faith under an umbrella, today we take lesson from that and say, never will I put my head down for other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the values that I know I believe in. So barakallahu feekum, and inshallah I look forward to seeing many more of you as confident Muslims out there making the world a better place. Okay. Where do you want me to sit? Okay.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. MashaAllah, wasn't that incredible? So I think we got our next year keynote speaker for MAS. So congratulations to MAS for this event. Barakallahu feekum. I think both of you were very touching in your own ways. With Eduardo, you kind of see the beginnings of that. With Abrar, we see the potential of where you've been able to reach, alhamdulillah, which has been just a great inspiration for many people. So I'm going to start with you, Eduardo. You said in the beginning that you think we're doing da'wah wrong. There are many things that you can relate to. Number one, there's a tendency when someone is very involved in the community to assume that they've gotten past a lot of the issues that would plague a new convert to Islam. Can you talk about why or how we're doing da'wah wrong? As someone from Brazil originally, named Eduardo, who used to be an Islamophobe. When people think former Islamophobe becoming Muslim, they don't look like you. All right? So Eduardo from Brazil, lives in Canada, very involved in IR. What are we doing wrong with our da'wah?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you. I think it's a very important question. The most beautiful things about Islam, as far as I'm concerned, I think are the simple things. Like smiling to your brothers, or just passing salam, right? But we tend to underestimate these small things. It's almost as if, this quote that says common sense is not common practice, therefore we kind of belittle its importance. But really, at the end of the day, it's the small things that counts, and specifically the small things that are centered around touching the heart. There's this quote that says, no one will remember what you said, but people will always remember how you made them feel. And I really believe that wherever there is love, there is life. And it's very important for us as a community to engage non-Muslims when we're trying to explain them the message of Islam, because I really believe that it's the birthright of every non-Muslim to hear about this transformative force called Islam. We have to start with love. We cannot think about, hey, I want to guide you because you're misguided, or hey, let me show you what the truth is because you are ignorant, or you're a jahil, or you're this or that. And even, we're talking about conversion and how I became a Muslim, but after becoming a Muslim, there was a lot of Muslims around me that just completely abandoned me when I came to Islam. Only a very few amount of people were there to kind of take me by the hand and explain to me what Islam was. And I think that's proof that we see people converting to Islam as like, oh, he converted to Islam because of me. Because very few people are there to just help you. So I think it has to start with sincere love. It's almost as if you have a medicine or a cure, you want to share it for other people to be able to be healed.
Abrar, can you tell us a little bit about what you think people don't see when they see you out there as someone who is, mashallah, achieving and achieving and achieving? What is something that you would advise people in terms of generating that faith that's necessary at a private level? I think that what you do, anyone that's in the public eye, and you're becoming increasingly in the public eye right now, there are going to be attacks, there are going to be times where you're going to feel like, you know what, I don't feel like campaigning, or I don't feel like speaking in public right now, I don't feel like meeting people, I don't feel like generating voters. Can you talk about something unique that you derive from the faith that can be of benefit to any other young Muslim that's aspiring right now, that sees the mechanics of political success but not necessarily the religious grounding?
Absolutely. And barakallah feek for the question. I think one of the things that I realized people would overlook is the amount of time necessary to invest in the spiritual side of yourself, in the introspective, reflective element, and in seeking out people who will be your best critics. For me, it was extremely important to find, whether it was my mom or spiritual mentors in the community who could point out to me my flaws, or who knew me before and could guide me otherwise throughout. And I honestly don't think anything is worth sacrificing your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and certainly some of these paths can do that. And so if it's not about taking those measures before, fortifying yourself. One of the things, subhanAllah, I actually want to mention was that you are building up, you're cultivating an immunity system over years to be able to sustain you just for a couple of months of something like a campaign. When, especially for younger people, when your parents instruct you to read the Quran and develop a relationship with it, to read hadith, to read the example of those who came before us, it's not just because you'll get hasanat, of course, and that's critical. But it's because of times like that when you won't necessarily have the time or the capacity to invest as much as you'd like, but you had built up that immunity system for yourself, that even your worst moments will still, inshallah, be within a certain guideline. So that's extremely important. And I would say prioritization in the times when we're most busy reflects what our values are. And if we don't make that time to sit down with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to make istighfar throughout these times, because there are so many ways that we fall short, then ultimately Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala won't bless that work for us. It's that fundamental connection that we can think, oh, all right, I'll pray later, or I don't have time right now to read a page of Quran or whatever it is, because I just need to get this thing done. But that won't have barakah unless you do that. So I think it's being deliberate and intentional about finding that time, and then those people who will tell you the hard things, hearing the worst about yourself.
May Allah bless you, mashallah. So with that being said, you said people who knew you before your public ascendance are people that can give you particularly meaningful advice, because no matter what the newspapers say, no matter how big you get, you're always just Abrar, right? So tell me about, who was Eduardo? What's the biggest thing that you feel like changed, other than not lighting people's hair on fire? All right. It's pretty cruel, man. Where did that come from? I didn't see that coming. That didn't come out in the pre-screening when I met him there. I didn't hear anything about No, but may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless that brother and allow that brother to find peace as well. What do you think changed about your character? What is the biggest difference in your life that Islam made outside of the realm of faith, pre-Islam Eduardo versus post-Islam Eduardo?
Bismillah. So, Islam teaches us that the difference between a believer and the difference between a disbeliever is like the difference between the living and the dead. Islam gave me life, and Islam gave me purpose. It gave me the ability to navigate with the world with a sense of confidence as to where I am from, where I am now, and where I'm heading. And that clarity, like what you were saying, Abrar, about being intentional and being deliberate, is so important, because if you don't have a goal, you can't score. It's pure and simple. And Islam allowed me to have the paradigms which brings about the best of myself. Like I was sharing with my story, when fasting made me grateful, and there was this kind of chain of events where the ultimate result was me going to hug my mom and telling her that I loved her, right? Because of one of the pillars that I was experiencing with, which was fasting. So I think I would summarize it to that: insight, perspective, and a clear sense of orientation.
So I want to stay with you on that note. Was there ever a time that you thought about going back, a breaking point? What was the most difficult test you faced as a Muslim? Because we know that a lot of people convert, and then unfortunately they don't find the support system, or tragedy comes and they're forced to make a choice and they go back, right? So can you tell us a little bit about that, if you ever had a breaking point or a moment where you thought maybe I didn't make the right choice here?
I'm glad you asked, because yes, it did happen where I had a breaking point where I felt that it was very difficult. It was a very heavy burden to carry on my shoulders. But what was the hardest was that I didn't have a lot of confident Muslims around me, as I mentioned before. And when you're vulnerable, meaning your friends are judging you, people are pointing the fingers at you, talking behind your back, and you're just in that space where you genuinely feel misunderstood, sometimes you question yourself, right? But I had full certainty that Islam was the truth. But the difficult environments in which I was kind of kept me going back to my old ways. Like, I remember when I converted to Islam, I had a girlfriend. And I told her, like, straight up, listen, we have to get married or that's it, because now there's no more fooling around and this is the truth. And she was like, Eduardo, if you want to break up with me, you can just tell me. You don't need to convert to another religion. And this is kind of a funny story, but it just goes to exemplify all the resistance that you're facing everywhere, and where people are just looking at you, and almost as if people look at you like you're weird. They don't understand you. And we all want to be validated. We all want to be felt. And I was everything but felt. So I had to give up on a lot of my old habits. Like, I literally went on a retreat in Dominican Republic, and I had like my swimsuit and some sheets on how to pray, right? Topless. And I was just like praying on the beach, learning how to pray. Like, I was doing my best. I was really struggling. No one was really there for a long time to help me and take me by the hand. So the struggle was real. It was very difficult. But I'm so grateful that I met some good people that allowed me to make big mistakes, and that accepted me with all my imperfection and all the obnoxiousness that came around being someone that had such a bad past, and give me that room to gradually, one step at a time, grow to be where I am today. Alhamdulillah.
MashaAllah. And Allah bless you. Eduardo is an inspiring person to be around, mashallah. Hoping we can keep you around more often. And I'm not going to ask if your wife found out who your girlfriend was and lit her hair on fire. I'm just going to leave that to the, in the background. Abrar, a theme of Confident Muslim has been that in every Muslim public figure's life, they face a breaking point, or they face, similar to what Eduardo was talking about, they face a moment where I can compromise on my values or I can stay strong. Usually compromise yields an immediate reward. Commitment means a lot of hardship is going to be in front of you, and your path to success is that much harder. Muslim women in particular, who are disproportionately impacted by Islamophobia, are also disproportionately criticized within the Muslim community. Right? We hold our female Muslim leaders and figures to a much higher standard than we do male Muslim leaders and figures. And you're also getting bombarded on the outside, bombarded on the inside. Tell me about that moment for you. We had Bilqis Abdul Qadir with basketball, Tahira Ahmed with her, Tahira Rahman with her newscasting, with the media spot, Bashir Jones in politics, city council. What was your what was that moment where you had to make a choice that you can go back to, and you chose to power through and maintain commitment?
I want to also address the internal point, because especially as a young woman, that was definitely a challenge. And I'll address that, and then I'll mention a specific moment. It definitely was not easy within the Muslim community. And alhamdulillah, I even came in with some level of a footing where my family had been serving the community for many years. But even that, I had people, there was a brother, may Allah guide all of us, who came up to me and came up to one of my volunteers and said, if you're not married and you can't run a household, don't think you can run a county. And there were comments like this, and even navigating our spaces, right, and having to give an announcement or engage people, and who the gatekeepers of the community are and who the leadership is, was certainly not without challenge. But I think it was always important to remember the compassionate elements there. That of course I'm upset, and I don't accept that our Muslim community would have things like this and reactions like that, but trying to tap into that deeper sense of compassion and understanding and empathy for where that person was coming from. To address potential breaking point, subhanAllah, there were probably several, and I would have to go back to the police incident, because I think that was a time when there was little information. Your lawyer is telling you not to say anything, and my inclination is, I want to speak the truth. I want to tell what happened, and I want to fight about it, and I want to make sure it changes and never happens to anyone else again. Because I was thinking, imagine if someone that was stopped was autistic or had limited English or was in a situation where they could have gotten shot. And subhanAllah, people around me didn't know what to do about it either, and they were looking to me for leadership at a time when I didn't even know how to handle that situation. And I think it was thinking back at, as I mentioned, examples from the Prophet ﷺ's time where they were under attack, where their lives were being threatened, and imagining if they were able to triumph and sustain the message at such a time and give up their lives to do it, then it's not about whether I can handle the situation. It's about, of course, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها, right? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not have given me a test I can't withhold, so how do I then show leadership in this moment? What would be prophetic behavior in this moment? And how do I continue? Because at some point you have to make the decision that the work is bigger than you. I have to care about my circumstance and my reputation to a certain extent and my health and whatnot, because the work is affected by it. When you kind of abstract yourself and realize that it's much larger than you and your personal experience and what's going on to you and what people think of you, but it's about, again, the cause and the broader mission of elevating humanity and addressing injustices, then I think there's a strength that one can derive from that.
Inshallah. What role have your parents played in helping you get to where you are? You have pretty extraordinary parents, mashallah, tabarakallah. So can you tell us a little bit about the role that your parents have played in being that support core for you and getting you to this point?
Yeah, that's a role that, subhanAllah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless them and reward them and make me a worthy daughter to them, because as you've mentioned, they played an instrumental role, not only morally, even, and all of us, subhanAllah, ended up leading such busy lives and schedules minute by minute. But even, walking out the door, my dad would bring up a reminder, like, Abrar, don't forget, you're facing all these pressures and you have to remember this and that. Or he would mention an example. I actually, particularly when rumors were abound, with this police incident and with various things. He reminded me of the example of Aisha radiallahu anha, who faced her own set of rumors and had to stand and was ultimately vindicated. So it was these stories that they would bring forward. My mom, may Allah bless her, ended up taking on the Muslim community's outreach and really elevating and empowering a lot of folks who otherwise wouldn't have been a part of the movement, if you will. Stay-at-home moms, people who otherwise wouldn't have been connected. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless them, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to kind of shed light on that.
Ameen, mashallah. Dr. Esam, I always tell him that he changed my life with a post-Fajr khatira in a hotel room about 15 years ago probably. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you and your family. It's an extraordinary family. Eduardo, tell me about your mom. You said that Islam brought you nearer to your mom. Tell me about what role your mom has played and what role your conversion has played in the relationship dynamics between you and your mother.
Bismillah. Just before I answer that question, I just wanted to say something with regards to the brother who I lit his hair on fire. I actually took his Muslim name on my certificate of conversion, which is Mahdi Abdul Aziz, because I wanted to honor that brother. Now, with regards to my mom, so my mom, if I'm to basically draw a clear picture as to what her contribution was, she basically made the field fertile for the seed of Islam to be able to plant and grow. She's someone that I see as a Muslim, but she hasn't really accepted faith because of the Catholic background and all the negative experience she had with religion. But my mom is something that teaches me Islam as a Muslim. Like, I spend time with her and I see her as a teacher. She'll literally tell me stuff like, one day I was with her and I'm like, Mom, are you happy? And she says, no, I'm not happy, but I'm at peace. Like, okay, can you explain? And she tells me, well, how can you be happy in a world where there's so much suffering? Even you, look at your brothers and sisters that you're trying to help in Gaza, right? And the Syrians and the Yemenis, their suffering is real. How can you be happy in a time like this? You have to be selfish. And she's not trying to be sophisticated when she says this. She says it really from the bottom of her heart. But she says, I'm at peace because I'm doing everything humanly possible for me to be able to make a difference in the world. Even look at yourself as Muslims. You don't say, happiness be upon you. You say, peace be upon you. So peace is the ultimate objective. And I'm like, mashallah, like, I'm learning Islam from you, so.
Allah bless you. All right. In 1 minute from each of you, why is yaqeen so important? You were telling me backstage what yaqeen has meant to you as a convert in particular. Why do you think yaqeen is so important?
I honestly believe that the work that Yaqeen Institute is doing right now is the most important work that is being done out there, because you see a lot of non-Muslims take their opinions by procuration. In other words, they go on media channels and see someone who looks like he's legitimate with a tie and a suit, speaking well, and they're saying, well, he sounds like he knows what he's talking about, so this must be the truth. And Yaqeen Institute is really at the forefront of providing alternative sources of information that are actually authentic and valid. And it's contributing to, removing all this disinformation that is out there. So for me, Yaqeen Institute will always have a close place in my heart, and I'm honestly really grateful that this work is being done. And I encourage everyone here to also contribute and help Yaqeen Institute to the best of your ability, to guide people like me that used to be in a jahiliyyah before.
All right, quick.
Oftentimes in this work and in these arenas and in any kind of high stakes or busy lifestyle, there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of chaos. People will always have things to say, opinions, things to bring you down. And it's ultimately certainty in your faith and your connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's an unchanging matter, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will always be there for all places and time. And I think cultivating that and making sure that we have that certainty in our own hearts to fall back on and to lean on in those times and in those environments when you may not even know who yourself is anymore. It's such a critical component, and may Allah bless the efforts of Yaqeen to cultivate that faith in all of us, and I hope we all spend that time to invest in it.
So, in conclusion, Jazakumullah khairan to both of our incredible guests. and to all of you for attending, mashallah. So there are a few thousand people in here. So if we don't get at least 3,000 downloads of the Yaqeen app, which is free, so you can go on your phone, download the Yaqeen app, inshallah ta'ala, then we're going to know that somebody didn't feel like downloading an app. So please do download the Yaqeen app, inshallah ta'ala. And also, because we don't just want to celebrate the confident Muslim, we want to generate the confident Muslim. Inshallah, in room S106. Please don't go to the Hyatt and knock on room 106's door. S106. It's not in your program. At 5:30, inshallah ta'ala, I'm going to be presenting Yaqeen 2020 Vision. It's not in your program booklet. So if you want to go join us, inshallah, it's limited seating. But we're going to be talking about Yaqeen 2020, inshallah, and then some of the things coming up, and also take some questions. So that's S as in Sam, 106, inshallah. We want to again thank MAS for the incredible convention, the partnership that we have with MAS. May Allah bless MAS-ICNA, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us all to find certainty in our faith. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.